You wake up early, not because you love mornings, but because responsibility trained you to. You're in your 30s or 40s, educated, employed, reliable. The kind of man people trust with work, but never with opportunity. You did what you were told. You studied. You stayed professional. You didn't gamble your future on stupid ideas. 5, maybe 10 years pass, and nothing collapses, but nothing lifts either. Your title changes slightly, your salary inches forward, your life stays heavy. Then you look sideways. The guy everyone used to joke about. The one who talked too loud, skipped steps, took shortcuts, said things that made you cringe. He's not a genius. He's not polished. But somehow he has options. Money that breathes. Time that belongs to him. Rooms you were never invited into. That's the quiet burn. Not jealousy, confusion. Because you know you're not dumb. You understand systems. You see patterns. You can explain exactly why things should work. Yet you're watching people you underestimated move past you without asking permission. This is the pain no one names. Doing everything right and still being irrelevant. Following rules that were never designed to reward you. You don't feel like a failure, which makes it worse, because failures get sympathy. You're just stuck, invisible in motion. Here's the truth most people avoid saying out loud. The world doesn't punish you for being stupid. It sidelines you for being obedient. It doesn't care how correct you are. It cares who moves, who claims space, who stays standing when things get uncomfortable. The most painful position in life is not failure. It's watching people you underestimated pass you quietly. And deep down, you feel something is wrong, but you can't name it yet. If this feels familiar, write "I see it" in the comments. To understand why this keeps happening, you need a different lens. Not motivation, not self-help, but observation. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli wasn't interested in being good, liked, or morally impressive. He watched courts, leaders, and ordinary men move through power and noted one uncomfortable pattern. The people who rose were rarely the smartest in the room. They were the ones who acted when others hesitated. Machiavelli didn't ask who deserved success. He asked who actually got it and why. That question matters here. Because intelligence helps you understand the game, but power determines whether you're allowed to play. Intelligence is knowing the rules, the structure, the risks, the probabilities. Power is being chosen, being invited, being tolerated, being repeated. Power is the meeting you weren't qualified for but still entered. The deal you weren't perfect for but still closed. The chance you took before you felt ready. The world does not reward who understands the game. It rewards who plays it. This is where smart men get trapped. They wait for clarity, fairness, or permission, while others move with incomplete information and messy confidence. Knowing the rules never made anyone rich. Using them at the right moment. Here is where the real mismatch begins. Because intelligent people are usually playing a game that no longer exists. You were trained to believe that deep understanding leads to recognition. That if you see the full picture and wait until you're certain, the world will naturally make room for you. So you prepare. You research. You model outcomes in your head. You delay action until it feels justified. Meanwhile, reality moves without you. Markets don't pause for clarity. Opportunities don't explain themselves twice. They appear briefly, reward whoever touches them first, then disappear. Think of two people watching the same trend. One spends 2 years analyzing a startup idea, reading case studies, mapping risks, waiting for the perfect version. The other builds a rough copy in 2 weeks, messy, incomplete, even embarrassing, and start selling immediately. One gains insight, the other gains customers. One feels smart, the other gets paid. This is not because the second person is more capable. It's because the game isn't about accuracy, it's about timing. Smart people assume the best move is the correct move. The market only cares about the visible move. You don't get credit for what you almost did or what you fully understood but never released. By the time your logic feels airtight, someone louder, faster, and less cautious has already claimed the space. That's why this hurts so deeply. You weren't lazy. You weren't careless. You were responsible in a world that rewards exposure. The rules you followed trained you to optimize before entering, while others entered and optimized on the way. And once they're inside, they control the narrative, the leverage, and the second chance you never get. This is the trap. Preparation becomes a hiding place. Intelligence becomes a delay mechanism, and clarity turns into an excuse that sounds rational but keeps you stationary. The market doesn't reward preparation. It rewards appearance at the right time. Once you see this gap, the question stops being why they moved faster and becomes why the same pattern keeps repeating across money, careers, and influence. The answer isn't luck, and it isn't intelligence. It's a set of behaviors most smart people were never taught to use. What you're about to hear are 8 principles that quietly explain how people with less insight but more nerve keep pulling ahead. These are not theories, they're patterns. And once you recognize them, you can no longer unsee how the game is actually being played. All right. Now let's start with the first law. Because this is where everything quietly breaks for smart people. Law 1 shows why blind belief often beats careful intelligence, and why that result feels so unfair when you're the one thinking things through. Delusional belief isn't about being dumb. It's about being insulated from fear. Fear is what paralyzes people who can see too much. When you analyze deeply, you don't just see opportunity, you see risk, embarrassment, wasted time, and all the ways things could go wrong. That awareness feels mature, but it slows you down. The person who moves first isn't necessarily braver. They're just less haunted by consequences. Because they don't see the full danger. They step forward while you stay put. Think about someone who starts a simple local service. Pressure washing, window cleaning, basic social media ads for small businesses. Nothing fancy. No perfect system. He launches early, undercharges, messes things up, learns in public, and keeps showing up. You notice every flaw. You tell yourself the model is weak, the branding is sloppy, the margins aren't optimized. You decide you'll do it better when the timing feels right. 2 years later, his business still isn't impressive, but it's real. It has customers, referrals, cash flow, and confidence built from repetition. Yours is still an idea you explain well, but never tested. That's where the gap forms. Confidence creates motion before logic signs off. Motion creates feedback. Feedback creates adjustment. And adjustment turns into experience that no amount of planning can replace. Smart people try to think their way into certainty, but certainty never arrives. The market doesn't wait for you to feel ready. It rewards whoever is visible and moving. The longer you wait to feel prepared, the more space someone else quietly occupies. From the outside, blind belief looks reckless. In reality, it filters out doubt and noise. Over time, repetition turns early confidence into actual competence, even if it started shaky. You don't need to be right at the beginning. You need to be in motion. Confidence moves first. Logic arrives later to explain why it worked. Waiting protects your ego, but movement builds evidence, leverage, and belief you can reuse again and again. Momentum forgives ignorance. Hesitation only compounds regret after the window closes and never reopens. Now we move into the second law, and this one hurts because it exposes a rule most smart people secretly follow without realizing it. Law 2 is simple and brutal. The world runs on visibility and familiarity, not merit. Being good at what you do is private. Being seen is public, and public always wins. People you think are less intelligent don't wait to be discovered. They introduce themselves, insert themselves, and make sure their name sticks. Smart people, on the other hand, assume quality will speak for itself. So they stay quiet, do the work, and wait to be invited. That invitation often never comes. Picture two employees in the same company. One is sharp, dependable, delivers clean work, and keeps his head down. The other talks more than he delivers, volunteers for meetings he barely understands, shares half-baked ideas out loud, and somehow keeps showing up everywhere. When a new opportunity appears, a project, a promotion, a chance to lead, guess who gets picked? Not the best, the known. Familiarity feels like trust even when it's unearned. Visibility feels like competence even when it's thin. This is the uncomfortable truth. Silence doesn't signal depth. It signals absence, and absence gets ignored. The world doesn't reward who waits their turn. It rewards who claims space early and often. This isn't about being loud for the sake of ego. It's about refusing to be invisible. When people see you repeatedly, they stop questioning whether you belong. Familiarity lowers resistance. Presence creates permission. Meanwhile, the smartest person in the room stays unnoticed because no one is looking for him. That's why this feels unfair. You didn't fail. You followed a rule that no longer applies. Doors don't open for the best. They open for the known. Once you understand this, the pain starts to make sense. It was never about your capability. It was about your absence from the conversation where decisions were made. And if you've ever watched someone less capable get picked first while you stayed seated, you already know this law is real. Have you ever watched someone less capable get picked first? Comment seen it. The third law begins where most intelligent people quietly exit the game. Law 3 shows that rejection doesn't mean the same thing to everyone, and that difference decides who moves forward. Smart people hear no and treat it as data. They respect it. They analyze it. They assume the answer is final and step back to protect dignity and efficiency. Stubborn people hear the same no and translate it differently. To them, no is temporary, emotional, or badly timed. It's not a verdict. It's friction. Look at sales and you'll see this immediately. One rep hears not interested and closes the file. Satisfied, he behaved professionally. Another follows up, reframes the offer, checks back weeks later, and eventually gets a yes from someone who initially pushed back. Most deals don't close on the first attempt. But smart people stop early because they mistake politeness for progress. The same pattern appears in hiring. One candidate sends a perfect resume, gets rejected, and moves on quietly. Another reaches out directly, asks for feedback, reapplies months later, and gets hired simply because they stayed visible. Even fundraising works this way. One founder hears no and retreats to perfect the pitch. Another keeps pitching, adjusts the story, builds familiarity, and raises money from someone who once passed. Rejection isn't a wall, it's a filter. It removes people who need certainty to continue. The world doesn't reward those who avoid discomfort. It rewards those who can tolerate it longer than others. Smart people want clean answers. Stubborn people want outcomes. Every no becomes exposure. Every follow-up builds tolerance. Over time, persistence creates familiarity, and familiarity softens resistance. This is why stubborn people appear lucky. They aren't. They just stayed when others left. Rejection doesn't stop stubborn people. It trains them. Each refusal sharpens timing, thickens skin, and normalizes pressure until no loses its emotional weight. And yes, arrives simply because persistence outlasted resistance. The fourth law explains why people who don't understand the odds often end up beating those who do. Law 4 shows that big wins usually go to those who keep swinging precisely because they don't know when they're supposed to stop. Smart people calculate probability. They estimate risk. They decide early whether something is worth continuing, and once the numbers look bad, they withdraw to avoid embarrassment. People who don't think in odds don't make that calculation. They try again, and again, and again. Picture a crowded gym late at night. One guy takes a single shot at a difficult exercise, fails, laughs it off, and moves on. Another keeps attempting it, failing publicly, missing form, attracting side glances. Most people would stop just to escape the feeling of looking foolish. He doesn't. He stays, not because he believes he'll succeed on the next try, but because leaving feels worse than failing again. Over time, something shifts. His body adapts, his timing improves. Eventually, the movement clicks, not because he was gifted, but because he refused to exit the situation. This is how success works outside the gym too. People who understand probability often quit when the odds look unfavorable. People who don't understand probability keep showing up until probability bends. They send one more pitch. They make one more call. They try one more version after everyone else has emotionally checked out. The secret advantage isn't optimism. It's tolerance for shame. Most people don't fail because they ran out of chances. They fail because they couldn't stand being seen failing. The world quietly belongs to those who can stay awkward longer than others. Staying when others leave multiplies opportunity. Because every extra attempt is a chance no one else is taking anymore. You don't need to believe you'll win. You need to refuse to walk away. Smart people protect their image by stepping aside early. Less calculating people protect momentum by staying in motion. Over time, repetition erodes fear. And fear is what keeps most people polite, careful, and invisible. Success isn't about making the perfect move. It's about remaining in the arena after everyone else has removed themselves to save face. The longer you stay, the fewer competitors remain. And eventually, staying becomes winning by default. Success is staying in the game longer than your shame can tolerate. Law 5 cuts straight through the ego, and that's why intelligent people resist it the hardest. Copying isn't shameful. Ego is. Smart people want to be original, different, impressive, so they waste years trying to invent something new when the market is already paying for something familiar. Practical people don't care about standing out. They care about getting paid. They look at what already works and repeat it in a place, format, or scale where it hasn't been done yet. Think about local businesses. One person spends months dreaming up a unique concept, a brand no one has seen before, a perfect angle that will finally prove how smart they are. Another opens a boring service that already exists everywhere else. Landscaping, cleaning, simple home repair. A small agency copying a proven offer. No innovation, no genius, just execution. The first feels proud of the idea. The second collects checks. This is the quiet divide. Intelligence often chases distinction. Reality rewards duplication. Most money isn't made by pioneers. It's made by people who follow the map after it's been drawn. Smart people think copying is beneath them, as if success is a moral award for creativity. People who win understand that money doesn't care about pride. It cares about delivery. The market doesn't ask whether your idea is original. It asks whether it solves a problem people already know they have. Replication works because demand is already proven. You're not convincing anyone. You're just showing up. That's why franchises outperform most independent businesses. That's why simple services quietly create millionaires while brilliant ideas die in notebooks. Originality feels noble, but it delays action. Copying feels boring, but it accelerates results. You don't need to reinvent the wheel to move forward. You need to put your hands on a wheel that's already turning and push it further than others are willing to. Ego wants applause. Money wants reliability. Originality feeds the ego. Replication feeds the bank account. Law 6 flips the order most intelligent people trust. Instead of knowledge creating action, action is what creates knowledge. Overthinking feels like discipline, but in practice it's delay, with a clean explanation attached. Smart people keep polishing the plan because they believe movement without certainty is irresponsible. Meanwhile, others move with incomplete information and let reality correct them in real time. The difference shows up fast. One person spends months learning a new tool, reading guides, comparing options, waiting to feel confident enough to begin. Another opens it the same week, breaks things, ships something rough, and improves only after people respond. The first collects understanding, the second collects data, and data always wins. You don't learn by thinking harder, you learn by colliding with reality. Motion exposes blind spots that planning can't touch. Feedback sharpens judgment faster than analysis ever could. Smart people try to become intelligent before they act. Fast people act and become intelligent because of it. That's why speed looks reckless to those who haven't moved yet. It forces mistakes early, but it also forces growth early. The market doesn't reward polish in isolation. It rewards presence, responsiveness, and iteration. Every delay hands experience to someone else. Every hesitation gives momentum away. Waiting feels careful, but it keeps you theoretical. Movement feels messy, but it turns effort into progress. Once momentum starts, it pulls clarity behind it, like a wake. Understanding follows motion, not the other way around. Momentum creates intelligence, not the other way around. Law 7 dismantles the fantasy that one big idea is supposed to save you. Smart people often aim high and wide, chasing a breakthrough that proves their intelligence, while ignoring the quiet power of repetition. They want a genius move, not a boring one. But reality works differently. A small, ordinary win repeated for 10 years will outperform a brilliant idea abandoned after 6 months every single time. Think about simple businesses that look unimpressive from the outside. A guy who runs the same plumbing service in the same town for a decade. A woman who sells the same basic product to the same type of customer month after month, without trying to reinvent anything. Nothing about it is exciting. Nothing about it is clever. But over time, consistency compounds. Systems improve. Reputation builds. Margins grow. Meanwhile, someone else jumps from idea to idea, launching ambitious projects, getting early excitement, then quitting when progress slows and novelty fades. One path looks small but stretches long. The other looks impressive but collapses early. This is where intelligence often works against you. Big dreams feel meaningful, but they demand constant motivation. Small wins don't inspire, they endure. Repetition removes decision fatigue. Familiar work sharpens execution. Staying with something long enough turns average effort into leverage. The market doesn't reward vision alone. It rewards reliability over time. Smart people often quit too early because the work stops feeding their identity. Practical people stay because the work feeds their life. That's the difference. You don't need a revolutionary idea to win. You need something that works, even modestly, and the discipline to repeat it when it stops being exciting. Over time, what once looked ordinary becomes uncatchable simply because it didn't stop. Good enough, repeated long enough, becomes unstoppable. What Law 8 makes painfully clear is that intelligence rarely decides who stays, who gets invited back, or who keeps leverage. People don't remember how sharp your thinking was. They remember how being around you felt. Logic can persuade, but emotion determines attachment. In real environments, offices, teams, partnerships, the person who creates ease, who lowers tension and makes interactions feel lighter, is the one people keep close. Meanwhile, the person who is technically correct but rigid, draining, or constantly proving a point slowly gets edged out. Not because they're wrong, but because friction has a cost. You see this everywhere. There's always someone who isn't exceptional on paper but makes meetings smoother, conversations easier, problems less heavy. People relax around them. Trust builds without effort. Then there's the person who always has the right answer, always spots the flaw, always needs to correct the room. Over time, people stop looping them in, not out of resentment, but instinct. The brain avoids discomfort before it evaluates accuracy. Emotional memory outlives factual memory. This is why promotions feel unfair. This is why some people keep doors open long after logic says they shouldn't. Humans are emotional creatures pretending to be rational, and we choose comfort over correctness more often than we admit. Smart people assume being right should be enough. It isn't. Being right doesn't make people feel safe. It doesn't make them want to repeat the experience. Systems reward emotional impact, not intellectual dominance. If people feel respected, understood, or steady around you, they'll find reasons to keep you nearby. If they feel small, tense, or constantly evaluated, they'll quietly create distance, regardless of how intelligent you are. This isn't a flaw in the system, it is the system. Intelligence may open a door once, but emotion decides whether it stays open. People don't reward brilliance. They reward how you made them feel. If this changed how you see intelligence, write "different game" in the comments. If there's one thing to take from all of this, it's not that you're unintelligent, careless, or behind because you lack ability. You're not dumb. You were simply taught to play a game that doesn't exist anymore. Intelligence still matters, but not in the way you were promised. The world isn't structured around fairness, depth, or who understands things best. It's structured around motion, position, and leverage. That realization stings, because it means effort alone was never going to save you. But it's also freeing, because it explains everything that felt confusing and personal before. The people who passed you weren't chosen because they were better. They positioned themselves where choice happened. They moved before they were ready. They stayed when others left. They repeated what worked instead of perfecting what impressed. None of that makes them superior. It makes them aligned with how reality actually functions. This isn't a rejection of intelligence. It's a correction of how intelligence is used. You don't need to become louder, dumber, or reckless. You need to stop hiding behind preparation and start placing yourself where outcomes are decided. Understanding the rules is useful, but it's not decisive. Understanding without position leaves you watching. Position without perfect understanding lets you learn while moving. That's the difference you've been feeling but couldn't name. The uncomfortable truth Machiavelli understood centuries ago still applies today. Intelligence is a tool, Position is the weapon. Once you accept that, the frustration turns into clarity. You stop asking why things feel unfair and start asking where you need to stand. This channel exists to show you how the game is actually played in real life, not how it's explained in classrooms or motivational speeches. If you want to stop being correct and start being effective, subscribe if you want to learn how the game is actually played, not how it's explained.